Hello and welcome to the Business Tech Insights podcast. I'm your host, Brad Nelson, and today I am joined by Craig Henderson. Craig, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Craig Henderson, CEO and owner and founder of Extract Labs out of Colorado.
Very cool. And what exactly do you all do at Extract Labs?
We manufacture CBD products, mainly CBD, a lot of other cannabinoids, and we're slowly starting to transition into other functional uh, ingredients like mushrooms, ashwagandha, stuff like that.
So let me ask you just right off, because uh, I'm assuming your industry is very regulated. How do you navigate all those regulations? Provide good products for your customers, safe products, while staying within those regulations.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's we've been doing it for 9 years now, so obviously we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and now I feel like we're doing things right, and I feel like we've been doing things as best as we could for a long time. But to your point, it has been very regulated, and those regulations are constantly changing. So what was right 5 years ago, there's a new standard today. So yeah, it's extremely difficult trying to keep up with everything, and we do, whatever they want, we give them so we can stay in business.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm
Do, do you find it's fairly easy doing business in Colorado?
Most of our business is actually outside of Colorado. Most of our sales are outside of Colorado. As for running a business in Colorado, um, it's all I know. So, but what I've heard, it seems easier than states like California and maybe not as easy as states like Texas.
Sure. What so some of the other states that you sell to, I'm sure do you get requests from people for your products that live in states where CBD is outlawed or anything like that?
So CBD for the most part is legal in all 50 states. Some of the other products we sell, we have some THC products and some Delta 8 products that are not allowed in certain states. So, we don't sell to those states. I think there's about 8 or 10 with fairly strict rules. But for the most part, the CBD only products we sell to all 50.
Hmm. Now, I'm familiar with CBD and THC. What's Delta 8?
Delta 8's another version of THC. So THC is the common cannabinoid we're all familiar with in marijuana. And then there's THCA, which is essentially the acid version of THC. There's THCO, HHC, Delta 8. Delta 8's just one that became popular a few years ago, slightly more mild than regular Delta 9 THC. And it's also one that a lot of states are cracking down on, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to sell it in the future.
Mm, I see. Now, where did the idea come from to start this business, and like how did it all begin? Give me that
Yeah, so
story.
I'm a combat veteran. I got out of the military back in 2007, late 2006, early 2007. Served in Iraq 2004 and 2005 as infantry. Decided to get out and go to college and major in engineering. While I was in college, there's small talks of cannabis becoming legal in states like California, Colorado, and Washington at the time. And I was never a big consumer of cannabis, but while in the military, most of us just drank. I had a few buddies that did smoke weed. And at first, I judged them because of it, because I knew it was wrong. I thought it was bad. They're going to be a loser. And then I realized, it's really no different. If anything, they were probably more mild than I was when I heavily drank. So it kind of changed my mind a little bit, seeing people that smoked weed. And then, the more research I did, the more I realized that people take it to, the same reason I was drinking on the weekends is the same reason people consume cannabis, because it makes them feel good, or it takes away pain, or it takes away stress. And, yeah, I kind of, I started really, believing in the plant. I tried it a little bit myself. It never really did much for me, not in a good way.
Mm,
It create, paranoia and anxiety, but that just because I don't like something doesn't mean it should be illegal. So I still believed in the plant. I saw what it was doing for others. So as I was graduating college in 2014, I decided to, move out to Colorado and get in the industry. The dream was to start a cannabis industry of my own, a cannabis company of my own one day. Um, but then CBD became a thing. So I was working in the industry, teaching people how to do extractions, how to turn marijuana into oil. And that's when I learned about CBD back in 2016. Um, it didn't seem like a huge industry, but I did see, that it provided medicinal relief without getting high. So to me, that was, I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's for people like me. And I kind of assumed to be a super small niche and a few people would like it. And it turned out, a lot more people than I realized liked it. And, a small business out of my garage quickly developed into, in 3 years, a $10 million business.
Very cool. And how does that process go of extracting the oils?
So yeah, you just like tea or coffee, we perform extractions on coffee every morning. We run hot water over it and we pull from it what we want. Well, things like cannabis require a little bit more than hot water. You have to run, a solvent through it. Solvents like ethanol or work, liquid butane or liquid propane work, or in our case, we used, compressed supercritical CO2 or
Mm,
subcritical CO2. It's essentially like liquid carbon dioxide. We run that over the plant material, just like you would hot water over coffee. You pull out the oils and, get rid of all that CO2 or butane or propane or hot water, and you're left with, an oil extract.
mm. Now, I mean, propane and butane, that seems to me like something you shouldn't put in your body. But
Right.
the ethanol, of course, that's the alcohol part of alcohol, so that makes sense.
No,
But
and
then
that's a
the
great point. That's why we started with CO2 because at the
Mhm.
time there was just such this negativity around propane and butane, and we still use CO2 today. But I don't want to, knock on propane and butane too much because it is a great solvent. We've used it in the past for certain products. Just because you're using liquid propane, you pull out that solvent, and then, if that solvent sits out in atmospheric conditions, that propane butane is going to evaporate right out.
Right.
And people also do other things like they distill it or they put it in a vacuum oven to make sure all the propane and butane is out of the extract. So it as long as it's done right, it's completely harmless.
Sure, but the CO2 seems safer. Again, I'm not a chemist, so I
Hmm.
wouldn't know, but just CO2 just seems I'd be more willing to consume something that was in contact with CO2 than something that was in contact with propane.
100%. And that's why we chose to go with CO2. That's what I believed in the beginning. The first company I worked for was a CO2 company. As an engineer for that company, teaching people how to do CO2 extractions. And, it's much slower than propane and butane. So I think if you're trying to process tens of thousands of pounds a week, propane, butane, or ethanol, but we keep everything real small batch and we're very happy with CO2. And just like you said, when people see that we use CO2 over hydrocarbons, I think it is a selling point.
Yeah, definitely. And now, what was the jump from? Because you said that you didn't used to use any sort of cannabis products, and then you transitioned to using some, but it wasn't really the best thing for you. It seems like. So what was the transition from that into making a business out of it? Because I feel like um, most of the time somebody is really passionate about something and then they get into business for it. It seems like maybe you weren't quite as passionate about the cannabis products initially.
For me, it was, like I said, back when I thought cannabis was bad, that's the way I was raised. And then I started maybe shaming my friends a little bit for it. But then I was like, I probably should educate myself on this. And, there's plenty of documentaries over the last 20 years of people, suffering. And then you see them smoke cannabis or consume cannabis, and that suffering goes away. Sometimes visually, you can see it helping people. And so I was just sold on the fact that this does help people. It might not be something I need at that time. I do consume a little bit more today, but when I was 21, 22, I was a healthy person. I guess there's nothing wrong with me. I guess I didn't need it. Um, but I believed in it so much that I wanted to help people. And I just saw an opportunity in the industry. of, with my engineering background. And then when I heard about CO2 extraction, that's when I really saw an opportunity. So a mixture of I believed in it so much, even though I wasn't using it, and I just saw opportunity. A lot of people were growing weed, not a lot of people were extracting it properly, and putting it into a bunch of different products.
Yeah. Now, first off, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. Yeah.
And do you have a lot of veterans that are customers of yours? Do you feel like this
Yeah, our
helps veterans
business
with stuff?
Yeah, our business isn't solely veteran focused, but it's heavily veteran focused. Our branding, if you go to our website, extractlabs.com, you'll see it's kind of got like a military manly feel to it. We try not to take it too far. Um, and yeah, we offer 60% discount to veterans, first responders, healthcare workers, firefighters, low income people, and people with disabilities. So, it's an expensive product. If I didn't work here, make the products, I probably wouldn't be able to consume or use our products as much as I do. So we want to make it accessible to people. Unfortunately, we still need to turn a profit. So we've chosen to offer 60% discount to all those people I just mentioned, and then, everyone else pays full price.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Now speaking of your website, I I pulled it up and I was looking at it earlier, and you're right. I like the design. Looks good.
Nice,
Um,
thank you.
what kind of technology do you use to run your business or promote your products or any of that?
A lot of the same ones everyone else does. We use Facebook advertising, which covers Instagram advertising. We go to trade shows. We used to go to a lot more business to business trade shows. Today, we're more consumer focused. Our
Mm,
biggest, revenue stream is direct to consumer through our website. And so we attend like CrossFit trade shows or, anything where there's a lot of people pushing themselves hard and getting hurt is where our
mm,
products seem to do best. As for technology, there's a list of things we use on our website. The one off the top of my head that we probably use the most is HubSpot, which we use for our online chat. So when people come to our website and they're chatting to someone in this building right next to me. They're not chatting to someone overseas. Um, Recently, we have updated the HubSpot to use their AI. So you might
mm,
start your chat off with AI, and what's cool, we've tried this in the past where you try to automate things. People ask a question, you send them an automated message, you hope that it solves the problem. And it just never did. So we were forced to, have customer service running from, 9 in the morning till 9 at night answering questions. But now with HubSpot AI, I think people really do think they're talking to a real person. And obviously we're monitoring all these. The only time we're not monitoring is after hours. And a lot of times, if AI is able to answer that question for them, and if it's not, we feed AI some more information. Like, hey, next time you should do this. Here, read this article, essentially. And AI gets better and better and better at answering those questions. So during the day, you're talking to us. After hours, you're talking to AI. And if you still need to talk to us, you can leave us a message.
yeah. It's interesting. I've done quite a few of these podcast episodes, and there's kind of a theme that I'm noticing where um, when there's a customer facing portal and you're interacting with customers, a lot of people are implementing those AI chatbots, but they're noticing that uh, there's kind of a piece that's missing as far as that human to human interaction. Like I've talked to some healthcare providers and stuff, and they're saying, oh yeah, AI is making things a whole lot easier for us, but a computer can never replace that bedside manner or that connection. Um, and yeah, it sounds like you've experienced something similar.
Oh, definitely. And, that's why we still have the same amount of customer service people as we did, 2 years ago. But where I'm at with it is, when Chat GPT, when I got introduced to that, what was it, 2 years ago, it became a thing. Um,
Yeah.
there was all this talk of this AI customer service, and it was really crappy. And then, we implemented it finally about 6 months ago, and it's a lot better. And at the rate it's going, in 6 months to 12 more months, it's going to be excellent. So, I don't want to miss out on that technology. Especially if I can answer customer questions at 2 in the morning from Australia. Um, the option is have nothing or have this, and I think over time this will get a lot better. We've already
Yeah.
seen it get better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's improved quite a bit. Although I will say I was just talking to my marketing guy this morning about this. I feel like the new version of Chat GPT is better in some ways, but it's not as good with some of the more technical stuff. I was trying to troubleshoot something on
Hmm.
one of our servers, and I like to use Chat GPT to help me along. And it actually ended up making this particular problem harder. But
I've
most of the time it
experienced that
helps.
lately for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But
I agree with you. I think in some ways it's gotten better, but there's been some times I was like, it used to be able to help me solve these problems really quick, and now it sends me down like the wrong path, I feel like.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I've actually thought about building our own AI server here to host our own local LLM and feed it. The kind of documentation and stuff that we have to read, and seeing if that will help us out. But I
Nice.
haven't tried that yet. Um, So, as far as AI goes, what do you think about AI overall? Do you think that it is going to be a boon for humanity, or do you think it will end us all?
Um, I don't want to be I'm on board for it. And I think the reason I'm so on board for it is because, there's people in the past that, frowned on the internet when it first became a thing because it was, putting libraries out of business or whatever. And I don't want it to, or when computers first came out, some people weren't on board with it. And I feel like, I'm already 42 years old, almost 43. If I start shunning away from technology, then I'm just gonna get left behind. And in my 50s, I'm gonna be so far behind that I'm not gonna be able to, stay employed. So I'm on board with it. We use ChatGPT, I'd say, 6, 7 times a day, whether it's personal life or a lot in work, like you said, troubleshooting, constantly troubleshooting. Instead of taking my computer to get repaired at Best Buy, I found that Chat can help me, run diagnosis on it, figure out what's wrong with it, and most of the time fix it, and it doesn't cost me a penny.
Mhm.
Um, Writing articles, responding to customers, changing formulations downstairs, stuff I would have not never taken on as a project a few years ago. I'm like, well, I got this sidekick now who knows a lot. And in between, going back and forth with it, I'm able to solve a lot of problems I wasn't able to a few years ago. So I'm on board with it. Whether it's going to take over humanity, I don't think so. Yeah, if it is, probably not anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of in the same place as you. I think it could be dangerous if it's used inappropriately, but I think that it can also be used for great good. And I mean, it saves us a ton of time because we write a lot of documentation and policies and procedures and that sort of thing. And uh, those AI assistants can help us take something that would take us 3 or 4 hours to write and turns it into something we can write in like 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a time saver for sure.
Yeah. I do think though, like I said, if it's used inappropriately, I think it could be used for uh, nefarious means and end up causing a lot of harm. You hear a lot about it in use in military applications, which again is kind of a double-edged sword. You have well, and you have experience, maybe probably not with AI in warfare, but if you can use AI to save the lives of soldiers, then I think that's a great thing. However, when you cross that line and give a computer the decision whether or not to end human life, that's where I think it can get a little dangerous.
Definitely. There's definitely, as I could see, my mind plays scenarios all the time. There's definitely scenarios where it could, get dangerous, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving forward into the future with your business, are you planning on expanding? And if so, where do you want to expand? I guess where are you now? Are you just in the United States? Are you global?
We ship, we're only in one facility. We have one building here right outside of Boulder, Colorado, and we ship to all the states, and we ship to probably 6 or 7 different countries on occasion. It's not huge business for us, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. Like we talked about regulations earlier. Even countries like France, for example, has essentially the same laws we do, but getting our product out of our country into their country through customs, it's just hard. And, we figure it out sometimes, and we figure it out for a few people, but at the moment, it makes it difficult to really put a lot of energy into pushing, international. So our goal today is just to establish ourselves a little bit better here in this country. Um, I think I was using chat to help me figure out how many CBD companies there were in like 2020 versus today. And I think there's over 3,000 different companies in like 2019, 2020. There's still 2,000, 2,500 today. Um, so we see those numbers going down, just like our revenue numbers went down significantly in that same time frame. So
Mm.
I think for people to survive, there's going to need to be some consolidation, which we're starting to see. Companies that were much bigger than us a few years ago were bigger than today, and bigger companies are gobbling them up. So my focus today is trying to dabble in consolidation. We're not massive. We don't have millions of dollars just to be buying everyone up, but there are small companies doing the right thing, similar to what we're doing. They might only be doing 500,000 a year, but I'd like to bring them underneath our brand and try to get their customers, show their customers what we do, and grow our company that way. And then by attending these CrossFit shows, really just sort of define our niche. There's a lot of different CBD companies. Like I said, 2,000 CBD companies all saying different things. So if we can win customers over with trust by attending these shows, that they believe heavily in, working out heavily, hopefully we'll earn them as a lifetime customer.
Now, do you get any pushback from the public? Do you get people pushing back and saying what you're doing is not good and that you shouldn't be manufacturing these products?
It's been a long time since we've had real pushback like that. And I'm sure there's people out there that don't like us or don't like what we're doing, but I guess they're nice enough to not say anything to me because I haven't had pushback in a long time.
Well, that's good. That's good. I feel like the sentiment is kind of changing because
Hmm.
we're similar in age, and I feel like the same kind of thing. When I grew up, it was very much using cannabis. Period was bad, and you know you'd have the cousin or whatever that would have a couple marijuana plants growing in their window or something, and you just
Yep.
had to keep it hush hush because otherwise the rest of the family would disown them or something
Right.
stupid. But nowadays I feel like it's a little more, and maybe there's just more research out there, or it's just become more socially acceptable that it is similar in a lot of ways to drinking alcohol, and um, that is socially acceptable. But again, it's different. I don't know. I've never personally used any cannabis products. And then the CBD stuff, like you were mentioning before, it doesn't get you high, but it helps with pain regulation and that sort of thing. Do you think that in the future, because the sentiment is changing, that CBD products will be kind of a normal staple in a lot of people's homes, just like soap?
I think it'll be a normal staple in a lot of people's homes, similar to, Tylenol. I tell people like, so what's this going to do for me? Well, is there something wrong with you? Because like if you took Tylenol and you're feeling perfectly fine, you're probably not going to feel anything. But if you've got 103-degree fever and you take Tylenol, you're going to feel better. Um, and that's why it's such a popular product. So I think our products are in line with that. Is like, if I go out and hike, a 14 miler and my knees are screaming, I rub our muscle cream on it, it does feel better. It's not morphine. It doesn't kill it all the way, but it does feel better. And, but if I just rub muscle cream on my skin a normal day, I probably don't notice anything. So I think it will be a staple for people that need it.
Mhm.
And then obviously the THC products I think will be more like beer or alcohol because that is slightly more recreation along with medicinal.
Mhm. And so do you, when your THC products, like I saw on your website, the Sojourn Seltzer,
Hmm.
is that's meant to be more of a recreational product, or is it meant to be more of a medicinal product as well?
Definitely that one's more of a recreational. Yeah, so in the way the hemp rules are written, as long as it's below 0.3%, it's legal. So we could have a lot more THC in there. There's people out there with 100 milligram THC drinks, But, I'm not a heavy cannabis consumer and I'm not trying to push heavy consumption. We thought that 10 milligrams with a little bit of CBD was a nice, you drink one before bed kind of thing, or maybe you're out with friends and you don't want to drink alcohol. You drink one of these. You still get to participate in the act of drinking, but with a little bit different outcome.
Do, and do you see more people interested in that sort of drink? Because I heard a statistic recently that uh, a lot of millennials drink alcohol, but a lot of Gen Z are old enough to drink alcohol, but they decide not to drink alcohol. Do you think that those people are attracted more to things like these THC drinks, or do you think that they just don't want any sort of intoxicants at all in their life?
I think it's more of that option. I think a lot of them are just don't want intoxicants in their life, which is awesome.
Mm.
I've got kids. I got a daughter who's 19 years old, and it's cool that, I've never caught her drinking. I've never caught her smoking, and I just don't think she's into it. And good for her. Not sure why. Like you mentioned, millennials are all into drinking. I'm not sure why we all wanted to drink so much. I think it's kind of cool that kids nowadays don't want to partake in that. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think overall that's probably a better, healthier way to live.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
still I still like to enjoy alcohol occasionally, but it also causes a lot of problems.
Mhm.
People who drink in excess end up with all sorts of health problems. Do you see any sort of long-term health problems with excessive consumption of THC products or CBD products?
It's hard to say. I haven't personally seen a normal person start consuming our products and then consume more, consume more, consume more, and end up with issues.
Mm.
I've seen people from a young age, and this isn't with my company, this is just in life as general, people with
Sure.
issues maybe started consuming too many things, different things as a kid. And maybe now as an adult, they're still consuming way too much of things, overdoing it. Um, But I have seen people that drink moderately, and then 10 years later, they're full blown alcoholics and can't function. So that I've seen with my own eyes, including family members of mine. I've not seen someone go down the cannabis path and ruin their lives like I have with alcohol. I just haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it's out there. But the people I know that you think they have ruined lives and they also happen to consume lots of cannabis, I'm not sure the cannabis ruined their life. I think there was other factors at play.
Hmm. It's just kind of a correlation thing, not a causation thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're suffering from whatever reason. I don't want to speculate on why they're suffering, but I think the cannabis is providing them some relief. Um, yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like that's um, just in my gut. I feel like that's true. I have no data to say one way or another, but yeah. Um,
You mentioned earlier about being disowned, the family members. That was my family's take on it when I first got into this industry. It definitely, they never came out and told me they disowned me, but, years passed where they wouldn't talk to me and they'd
hmm,
find out what I was doing, or I'd tell my sisters what I was doing, and my parents would text me, like, quit telling your sisters you're curing cancer. Well, I didn't say that, but I shared a study with them that cannabis does kill cancer. I'm not
uh-huh.
personally killing cancer, but, my parents definitely had a chip on their shoulder, and I still think they do. I think they're a little bit more accepting of it today, but I wouldn't say they're like extremely proud of me being in this industry.
Sure, but I mean, are they proud that you're a successful business owner at the very least?
They've told me that. Again, we're not on talking terms really today. It's
Hmm,
been like that my whole life, but I have heard them say that to me before.
hmm. And what do your siblings think overall?
I think they're highly supportive. I think they look up to me. I think they see, I came from nothing. So I think they
Hmm,
see what I've done and I think they're impressed. I don't call them every night and ask them, but from what I've heard and the vibes I get, it seems like they are impressed with what I've created out of, thin air essentially.
Yeah. And what is what was your journey like from that perspective, where you came from nothing and then now you are a successful business owner? What kind of hardships and stuff did you experience, or what kind of stuff wasn't hard?
No, the whole thing was miserable. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I was in the military. Served 2 tours or 1.5 tours in Iraq. Got a bachelor's and master's in engineering, which at the time was the absolute hardest thing I'd ever done.
Mm.
And then starting a business, I knew it would be hard based on what other people had told me, but it was absolutely miserable. There was a lot of just not knowing, if I could just make it to here, I'll be okay. And you get there and you realize there's 10 other things you're not doing right. And it was absolutely miserable. And there's definitely been, after about 3 years, there were some really good highs, and then the whole industry took a dump. And my mind was, we were gonna, at the rate we were growing, we'd be at 50 million by now. And that quickly got taken away. We dropped from 10 back down to about 4 or 5 million is where we're at today. And that was rough, letting
Mm.
people go, just completely changing our business model, trying to survive. And now I'm kind of back on this high again, because I feel like we've made it through the hardest part. And even though I'm happy, I'm still solving a lot of problems every day, still trying to figure out how to launch new products, I mentioned tapping into the mushroom industry, the ashwagandha industry. Um, these are things I know nothing about, so I just got to teach myself.
And now I feel like that industry is very regulated too, more so than cannabis. So how do you navigate that? Because I would assume, um, at least with the mushrooms, some of them are probably there's no regulations, but then other ones are very, very regulated.
So we're probably not going to deal with, psilocybin mushrooms just yet, because those are heavily regulated, and I'm not sure we can sell them online or anything. It would be nice to get in that one day. Right now, we're dealing more with like lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi. So compared to cannabis, it's a lot less regulated, and I think there's a lot of the same, alternative wellness, benefits to these mushrooms. Instead of taking pharmaceuticals to increase, make your mood better, I think lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, um, essentially you can accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, we have a lot of different wild mushrooms and plants here in Montana that have certain medicinal properties, but haven't been thoroughly studied and stuff. Like a good example is ghost pipe. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Ghost pipe. It's like a little. I think it's a fungus. I actually
Okay.
don't. I don't know if it's a plant or if it's a fungus, but it grows. They're only like this tall, and they look like little pale white flowers, kind of.
You know
And
what? I
you,
think I have seen one. I was looking at one the other day on someone's Facebook account, and I didn't know what it was, but it sounds what you're describing.
yeah, yeah, and they grow in the woods around here all the time, and you can just eat them uh, as is, or a lot of people will take them and they'll use like Everclear and make a tincture, and then
Nice.
you just use a couple drops, and it's good for pain and it's good for sleep. Um, Similar kind of thing, but there's been, as far as I know, there haven't really been any studies on it to say how safe it is or how effective it is or anything like that. Um, so with
I
with
think
some of
that's
the
why I kind of. Oh,
oh,
sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go
I would
ahead.
say I think that's why I kind of like this is, we know there's been some studies on lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, and the studies, show that they can be beneficial to people. But you're right, it is still early. But I think that's what I like about it is, if you can hop into something early enough, there's opportunity. If I would have started this company just 2 years later, we'd never be as big as we are today. Um, so I think timing's everything. So sometimes you need to get involved in something before you know exactly what it is. As long as you think that the outcome's going to be good, I think it's worth doing it.
Yeah, for sure. But I wonder, how do you ensure that those kind of things that haven't been studied very thoroughly, how do you ensure that they're safe to sell to people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I've never dealt with anything. Would you call it ghost pipe?
Yeah, ghost pipe.
Yeah, I guess I've never really dabbled in anything completely unstudied. At least we knew, there were some studies out there about cannabis. There's definitely studies out there about lion's mane. We recently launched a kava product, and same thing. There's some studies out there. Um, I guess I've never dabbled into something completely unstudied before.
Now, what's kava? I don't think I've heard of that.
So it's a root, and same thing. You can extract it. So we use CO2. We extract it. it's more of like an anti-stress, I think a lot of people take it for. It's
Hmm,
more in, like, tropical places.
hmm.
I wish I
Yeah.
would prepared myself a little bit better to give you a little bit more background on it. Um, the people I know are taking it is for stress. It just kinda, it won't get you high. I've
Mhm.
taken it. Again, it kinda leaves this numb feeling in your mouth,
Hmm.
and it's kinda weird tasting, but, it definitely if you take a lot of it, I've never seen anyone get really high or anything from it, but it will essentially maybe sedate you a little, just kinda keep you calm.
Yeah. Now, I I feel like there's a lot of plants and fungus and stuff out there that are beneficial in certain ways, kind of like what we've discussed already. Why do you think it is that these big pharmaceutical companies uh, basically put all of that down and call it pseudoscience and then feed everybody, very potent synthesized drugs?
I guess you can't make money off of something that's just out there growing in the wild. Everyone could do. I guess you can't patent it, right? Like,
Sure.
yeah, but you can patent oxys or you can patent Tylenol or there's yeah, if it's synthesized, you can patent it. If it just grows everywhere, you can't patent it, and there's no money to be made unless you're doing it like we are. But then you have 2,500, 3,000 competitors, or I'm not sure Pfizer has 3,000 different competitors.
Probably not. They've probably bought all of them.
Exactly.
So, have you thought about doing some studies of your own, or would that be? I would assume that would be very expensive, just in general to do. But do you think there would be benefit in doing some of those?
Definitely, and it is expensive. We have done it. We've done 2 now with, we chose to do it on cancer in dogs
Hmm.
and more so brain cancer in dogs. We work with CSU, Veterinary College up in Fort Collins,
Hmm.
Colorado State University, a great veterinary college. We called them back in 2018, 2019, like, "Hey, we wanna," I think we looked into a few things. Human trials were god awful expensive. Hopefully, one day we can afford it. Like, well, we can't afford to, you know, do tests with humans. Let's call up the university. They were sort of interested, sort of skeptical. And we said, well, can we test it on stress? And they're like, well, it's hard to check a dog's stress levels. Well, can we test it on this? Well, that's hard. I was like, well, what do you recommend? They're like, well, brain cancer is one of the most incurable cancers in humans and dogs. Um, and it's very easy to test. Let's give it to them, or let's do it in a petri dish and see what happens. And so the very first test we did was in petri dishes, and sure enough, it killed off the cancer. And they're
Hmm.
like, "Well, that's cool." And they were very skeptical. So when they called us up there to give us like the report and the findings, you could tell they were excited. Like, well, we did not expect this, but this is what happened. The next step was let's try it in mice. So the same thing. They got mice. They put brain tumors attached to the mice, and then I'm not sure if they injected the mice or fed the mice, and then we got those results back. A year later, and it cost like $200,000. And again, it wasn't complete home run. All you have to do is give them a little CBD and the cancer's gone. But they did notice it getting rid of brain tumors. Um, so now they're wanting to see if we want to go full blown scale. Let's test it, clinical trials on dogs. But today we can't afford it. So it is
Hmm.
on the back burner. And when we can afford it, we'd love to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a good idea to be skeptical with certain things like that because if you come from a place of, oh, yeah, this is going to work 100%, I could see how you could have some biases that would go into that
Yep.
study and maybe taint your results. So, being skeptical, I think is
It's a
probably a
great
good,
thing.
yeah, it's a good place to
Yeah.
come from when you're doing this sort of research.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think more research needs to be done. But I guess, unfortunately, it takes money to do these things. So and we got to rely on companies. I don't think the private civilians are just going to start donating monies to big universities to do this research. So companies like myself or bigger companies than me, over time, will do these studies. But unfortunately, it's going to take years. Companies need to be profitable before they can start giving money away.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, well, yeah, well, we're running up on our time allotted. What's one chunk of knowledge or one last thing you want to tell our audience?
Hmm. Something, back in this is kind of like a technology podcast.
Hmm.
And, I find, like I said, there's projects I'm taking on today, whether it's working on my car. I did a bunch of work on my car. I never would have taken on that challenge, a couple years ago. And I hope that kids, I'm trying to push it onto my kids. Anytime they bring me a question, I'm like, you don't need to ask me, go figure out how to talk to chat about this. Or they want to fix something on their e-bike. And like, can we take it to the store, Dad, and have them fix it? I'm like, why don't you figure out how to fix it? So it's kind of cool. I hope that people will continue taking on challenges that they think was impossible. Just like I was able to create gummy manufacturing. I knew nothing about gummy manufacturing, tincture, topical, lotion manufacturing, all self-taught between YouTube videos and chat. I hope more people take on projects like that and amaze themselves with what they can accomplish.
Yeah. What kind of car do you have?
I have a Ford truck.
Right on. I'm a Ford man, so
Nice.
I approve.
You have a Ford F-250 Super Duty.
Oh, right on, right on. I also have a Ford F250, but it's a 1978, so before
Oh, that's
Super Duty
cool.
was a thing.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Uh, cool. And how do you suggest that people encourage the younger folks to learn for themselves and challenge themselves?
Gotta make them do it. You can tell someone over just like my kids, just like I've been told. I've got, "Don't do that." And the only way I learn is by doing it myself, and the outcome is always exactly what someone told me it would be, but until you do it yourself, I think you gotta just go through it and, cry a little and not give up, not quit.
Yeah, good advice. I agree. So where can people find you and where can people find Extract Labs?
Yeah, extractlabs.com, and we're in 2 or 300 small stores nationwide. Um, so yeah, if you see a CBD shop near you, go in there. We might be in there. If not, ask for us and hopefully they'll carry us. Or you can just buy from our website.
Sure. Do you have any in Montana?
I know we have had some in Montana. I don't know off the top of my head if we do today.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
keep an eye out.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Craig. And thank you, everybody, for listening. You can find this podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Brad.